I smoothed down my deliberately chosen H&M dress as I walked into my family's weekly Sunday dinner. The $20 price tag would give Aunt Mary exactly what she wanted. Another reason to remind everyone of my unfortunate financial situation. If she only knew that the modest diamond studs in my ears cost more than her house. "Oh, Emma's here," Aunt Mary announced as I entered the formal dining room. "Still wearing that dress from last Christmas, dear?" "Actually, I bought this dress specifically for tonight. My closet full of Chanel and Dior would have to wait for another day. Preferably after Bloomberg released their article tomorrow." "You know how it is, Aunt Mary," I smiled, taking my usual seat at the far end of the table, the failure corner as my cousins called it. My mother shot me a disappointed look. After all, I was the daughter who'd thrown away a promising law career to play with stocks in my apartment. The family disappointment who'd refused to join Dad's firm or marry the right people or maintain the right social connections. If they only knew I owned the building their precious country club sat on. "Emma dear," Mom began with forced cheerfulness, "have you reconsidered Robert's offer? The junior partner position is still available." "Still working on my own projects, Mom," I replied, accepting the plate of roast beef being passed around. Projects like the hostile takeover of Robert's firm I'd been orchestrating for the past 6 months. "Projects?" my cousin William snorted. "Is that what we're calling day trading now?" I bit back a smile, thinking of the hedge fund I'd built from scratch. The one that had just closed its $5 billion deal. The one that would be revealed as mine tomorrow morning. "How's the market treating you?" Uncle George asked with fake concern. "Still trying to make it big?" I thought about my net worth, carefully hidden behind shell companies and offshore accounts. $340 million as of this morning, though tomorrow's announcement would likely push it higher. "Getting by," I said quietly, playing the role they'd assigned me. The struggling investor. The family failure. The cautionary tale they used to warn their children about straying from the approved path. My phone buzzed discreetly, a message from my CEO. "Bloomberg article ready for tomorrow. Stock positions secured. Ready when you are." "At least your sister is doing well," Aunt Mary announced proudly. "Sarah's law firm just made her full partner. And that house she bought in the Heights." The Heights, the luxury development I'd invested in 3 years ago. Sarah's exclusive address was actually my property, though the ownership was buried under layers of LLCs. "Speaking of real estate," Uncle George boasted, swirling his wine, "my firm just closed a deal on that new downtown development. Very exclusive. Very profitable." I nodded politely, not mentioning that my fund owned 51% of that development through a silent partnership. Uncle George's firm was essentially working for me, though he had no idea. "Emma could have had all this," Mom sighed to the table at large. "Top of her class at Yale Law. Could have had her pick of firms. But no, she had to follow this investment dream. Someone has to be the family disappointment," Cousin Rachel laughed, showing off her new tennis bracelet. "Not everyone can be successful." The bracelet was a knockoff of one I owned, the real version, bought from Cartier last year. But tonight wasn't about showing off wealth. Tonight was about letting them dig their holes just a little deeper. "More wine, Emma?" Aunt Mary offered sweetly. "I imagine you need it, living in that tiny apartment trying to make ends meet." My tiny apartment was actually the entire top floor of a luxury building I owned. The struggling lifestyle they mocked was carefully crafted to hide what I'd built while they weren't looking. "Thank you, Auntie." I accepted the wine, checking my phone again. Another message. Financial Times wants exclusive commentary for Morning Edition. Your reveal is trending in investment circles. Tomorrow they'd all learn that the family failure had built something extraordinary. That the daughter they'd dismissed as naive had created one of the most successful hedge funds in the city. That the cousin they mocked had been quietly buying up half the properties they bragged about. But tonight I'd let them enjoy their illusions one last time. "Did you hear about the Mitchell acquisition?" William bragged, straightening his fake Rolex. "Biggest deal of the quarter. My team led the negotiations." I hid my smile behind my wine glass. The Mitchell deal had actually been orchestrated by my fund, with William's team handling basic paperwork. They were so far down the transaction chain they didn't even know who really owned the assets. "How impressive," I murmured, checking another message from my CEO. "Wall Street Journal wants to break story simultaneously with Bloomberg." "Your call." You know, Emma. Aunt Mary leaned forward, her diamond necklace catching the light. It's not too late to reconsider your choices. Your father could still find me a position at the firm? I finished. Thanks, but I'm comfortable with my decisions. More comfortable than they knew. My fund had outperformed every major hedge fund for the past 3 years. The mysterious investor they'd all been speculating about was about to be revealed as the family failure they loved to mock. Comfortable? Sarah scoffed. In that tiny apartment? Driving that old Honda? The Honda was deliberate, like the H&M dress and modest jewelry. Success wasn't about showing off. It was about building something meaningful while they weren't looking. Speaking of investments, Uncle George announced, we just acquired that boutique hotel downtown. Very exclusive deal. Limited partners only. I nodded, remembering the paperwork I'd signed last week. My fund owned 60% of that hotel through a shell company. Uncle George's firm was merely managing it for me. Emma used to have such potential, Mom sighed to no one in particular. Top of her class, perfect credentials. And now she day trades from her sofa, Cousin Rachel finished with a smirk. Such a waste. My phone buzzed again, photos from my fund's latest acquisition. A $500 million commercial development in Singapore. The deal would be announced alongside my reveal tomorrow. More potatoes, dear? Aunt Mary pushed the bowl toward me. I imagine you need to save money on groceries these days. I accepted the potatoes, thinking about the Michelin-starred restaurants I owned. The private chef who cooked for my real apartment. The wine cellar worth more than Aunt Mary's entire net worth. You know, Sarah began, her voice dripping with false concern, my firm is always looking for paralegals. If you need a real job. I appreciate the offer, I replied, checking another message. Forbes wants to do a cover story. Youngest female hedge fund billionaire, Angle. Billionaire. Tomorrow's revelation would push my net worth well over the $1 billion mark. The family failure was about to become the family's wealthiest member, by several orders of magnitude. At least try to dress appropriately for dinner, Aunt Mary whispered loudly. That dress looks like it's from a department store. Sorry, Auntie. I apologized, not mentioning the Dior gown hanging in my closet for tomorrow's press conference. I'll try to do better. Such a shame, Mom murmured to her sister. She could have had everything. The right career, the right connections. I had more than they could imagine. My fund controlled billions in assets. My investment portfolio included half the premium properties in the city. My connections included CEOs, world leaders, and actual billionaires, not the country club socialites they worshipped. More wine, Emma? Uncle George offered condescendingly. Might help with the career situation. If he only knew that I owned the vineyard that produced this wine. That his exclusive wine club membership was at a facility my fund had acquired last year. That every real estate deal he bragged about required my final approval. The dinner continued, a parade of subtle digs and condescending comments. Each remark pushed tomorrow's revelation from satisfying to spectacular. They were writing the perfect script for their own humiliation. Just as Aunt Mary was launching into another critique of my poor life choices, the first notification hit everyone's phones. Breaking news from Bloomberg Markets. Oh, this is interesting, William said, scanning his screen. They're finally revealing the identity of that mysterious hedge fund manager. The one behind Phoenix Capital. My heart raced slightly. This was it, the moment 5 years of careful planning had led to. Phoenix Capital? Uncle George perked up. The fund that bought half of downtown? This should be good. Apparently they're doing a full reveal tomorrow morning, Sarah added, scrolling through her phone. There's already speculation about who it could be. I checked my own phone. All media embargo lifts in 3, 2, 1. Suddenly, every phone at the table buzzed simultaneously. The headlines started flooding in. Phoenix Capital founder revealed. Emma Chin emerges as Wall Street's newest billionaire. From law school dropout to hedge fund titan. The Emma Chin story. Mysterious investor unmasked. How Emma Chin built a billion-dollar empire in silence. The silence around the dinner table was deafening. This must be a mistake, Aunt Mary whispered, her face pale as she stared at her phone. No mistake, I said quietly, straightening in my chair. Phoenix Capital is my fund. Has been since I started it 5 years ago. William choked on his wine. But that's impossible. Phoenix owns half the premium properties in the city. Including this house, I added casually. I bought it through a shell company last year when Uncle George's real estate firm put it up for sale. We're renting from you? Mom's voice was barely audible. Along with half the country club members, I confirmed. That exclusive development you all love so much? Phoenix acquired it 2 years ago. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the Forbes article. Current net worth estimated at $1.2 billion? After today's market close, I nodded. Tomorrow's announcement should push it higher. But you live in that tiny apartment. Aunt Mary sputtered. Actually, I own the building. The tiny apartment is just where I meet family. My real residence is the penthouse. Uncle George was frantically checking his phone. The downtown hotel deal was approved by me, I finished. Phoenix owns 60% through subsidiary companies. Your firm just manages it for us. The Mitchell acquisition. William started. Also mine. Your team handled the paperwork, but Phoenix controlled the deal from the start. Mom sat frozen, her perfect composure shattered. All this time, while you thought I was failing? I smiled. I was building something extraordinary. Every deal you bragged about, every property you envied, every exclusive investment you celebrated, it all required my approval. I stood up, smoothing down my H&M dress. I should go. Press conference tomorrow morning. But first, I reached into my modest purse and pulled out a stack of envelopes. What are these? Sarah asked, taking one with trembling hands. Ownership statements. Every property, every investment, every deal you thought you controlled, all traced back to Phoenix Capital. To me. The room erupted in chaos. William was calling his office. Sarah was frantically texting her law partners. Uncle George sat staring at his phone, watching his real estate empire crumble under the revelation that he'd been working for his niece all along. But why hide it? Mom finally asked. Because I wanted to see who you really were, I replied. How you treated someone you thought was struggling. How you acted when you believed you were superior. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Aunt Mary, about this dress. I pulled out my phone, displaying a photo of my Real closet. I have a wardrobe worth more than your house. I just chose to wear H&M tonight. Sometimes success isn't about showing off wealth. It's about watching people reveal their true characters. The next morning I walked into my fund's real offices, a gleaming skyscraper downtown. My H&M dress was replaced by Chanel. My modest jewelry switched for actual diamonds. The press conference was a blur of cameras and questions, but one moment stood out. A reporter asked, "Why maintain the pretense of struggling for so long?" I thought about all the Sunday dinners, all the condescending comments, all the fake concern and real disdain. Success isn't just about making money, I answered. It's about understanding people's true nature. Sometimes the best way to build an empire is to let others think you have nothing. While they're busy mocking your failures, they miss your triumphs. The invitation to Sunday dinner came as a surprise. My parents hadn't invited me over in months, not since I refused to loan them $50,000 for my younger sister Sarah's destination wedding. My brother Tom had called me selfish, reminding me how they'd supported my education, conveniently forgetting I'd worked 3 jobs to put myself through medical school while they funded his failed business ventures. Still, something about Mom's insistence made me wary. After 15 years as an emergency surgeon, I'd developed a sixth sense for approaching storms. This dinner invitation felt like watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. I pulled up to their suburban home in my modest Honda Civic. I'd learned long ago not to show any signs of financial success around my family. The last time they'd seen my Mercedes, it had sparked a 3-hour lecture about family obligations and how I should be sharing my blessings. Sarah's BMW and Tom's new Audi were already parked in the driveway. Of course they were here. This was clearly a family ambush. Emily. Mom's smile was too bright as she opened the door. You're finally here. Everyone's waiting. The dining room was set with Mom's best china, another warning sign. Dad sat at the head of the table, a manila envelope beside his plate. Sarah and Tom flanked him, both wearing expressions that reminded me of cats who'd found an injured bird. Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence, Sarah smirked. At 32, my younger sister had never held a job longer than 6 months, but she'd perfected the art of manipulating our parents. Too busy saving lives to visit family? I ignored her jab, taking my seat. Thanks for inviting me, Mom. What's the occasion? Can't parents want to have dinner with their daughter? Dad asked, but his hand rested protectively on the manila envelope. Mom served her signature roast chicken, another red flag. She only made this when she wanted something. I'd barely taken 2 bites when Dad cleared his throat. Emily, we need to discuss something important. He pulled out documents from the envelope. Your mother and I have been updating our will. But we've been thinking about our legacy, Mom continued, her voice practiced. About ensuring our assets are distributed appropriately. Tom straightened up, attempting to look solemn but failing to hide his smirk. Sarah didn't even try to conceal her satisfaction. We've decided, Dad announced, that given your financial situation, you don't need an inheritance. The house, our savings, everything will be split between Sarah and Tom. I set down my fork, the metal clicking against fine china. My financial situation? Well, you're a doctor, Mom said, as if that explained everything. You make enough money. Your siblings need it more. I looked at Sarah, wearing designer clothes and a new engagement ring, then at Tom, who just returned from his 3rd vacation this year. Neither had ever supported themselves fully, always relying on our parents' generosity. Besides, Sarah added sweetly, you turned your back on the family when you refused to help with my wedding. Family should help family. Mom placed her hand on the will, her eyes meeting mine with a coldness I'd never seen before. You won't get a single cent, Emily. That's final. The room fell silent, waiting for my reaction. They expected tears, protests, maybe begging. Dad, I smiled. All right, I said calmly, standing up. Then don't expect a single cent from me either. Not now, not ever. What's that supposed to mean? Tom demanded. I picked up my purse, my voice steady. It means exactly what I said. Don't call me when you need money. Don't call me when there's a medical emergency. Don't call me for anything. You're being dramatic, Mom scoffed. Where else would they go for medical help? To whatever doctor will treat them without my referrals or connections. To whatever hospital will accept them without my reputation backing their bills. To whatever specialist will see them without my recommendation. The confidence began to fade from their faces as my words sank in. You wouldn't, Sarah whispered. Watch me. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. You've made your choice. Now live with it. As I drove away, I could see them through the dining room window, heads bent together, probably congratulating themselves on putting me in my place. They had no idea what was coming. Sometimes the worst storms are the ones you don't see approaching. The first sign of trouble came 3 weeks after the dinner. Tom called me 17 times in 1 hour. I let each call go to voicemail, remembering Mom's cold eyes as she declared I wouldn't get a single cent. The 18th call came from the hospital where I was chief of emergency surgery. Dr. Harrison, my colleague Dr. Peters, said, your brother Tom is in the ER. Severe abdominal pain. He's demanding to see you specifically. I'm not available, I replied calmly. Any of our qualified surgeons can handle it. There was a pause. He's having difficulty with the payment arrangements. He mentioned you usually handle that. Of course. I'd been quietly arranging preferential treatment and managing payment plans for my family for years. They had no idea how many strings I'd pulled, how many favors I'd called in. Not anymore. Treat him like any other patient. Tom needed an emergency appendectomy. Without my intervention, he faced the full cost, $35,000. His multiple failed businesses had left him with abysmal credit, and our parents' assets were mostly tied up in their house. A week later, Sarah's turn came. She'd been skiing in Aspen, another luxury trip she couldn't afford, and torn her ACL. Again, my phone exploded with calls. Emily, please, she sobbed in a voicemail. The specialist here won't see me without payment up front. Mom and Dad can't help because of Tom's hospital bills. I know what they said at dinner, but I'm your sister. I deleted the message. The real nightmare struck 2 weeks later. Dad had a heart attack. Mom's hysterical call came at 3 a.m. Emma, your father, please, we need you. The hospital wants $150,000 for the cardiac surgery. They won't do it without payment arrangements. He needs the best surgeon. I was already at the hospital. I'd been notified when he was admitted. I stood outside his room watching through the window as he lay there, connected to monitors. The best cardiac surgeon? I said into the phone. That would be Dr. Williams, who, coincidentally, only takes special referrals. Usually from me. Emily, please. Mom's voice broke. Whatever you want. We'll change the will. Anything. This isn't about the will anymore, Mom. This is about years of taking me for granted. Years of expecting me to solve everyone's problems while treating me like a family ATM. He's your father. And I'm your daughter. The one you disinherited because I was doing well enough on my own. Remember. The silence on the other end was deafening. There are other hospitals, Mom finally said weakly. Yes, there are. And every cardiac surgeon worth having in this city knows me. They know my work. They value my referrals. Good luck finding one who'll take a high-risk surgery without payment up front, especially with your current financial situation. I hung up, watching through the window as Mom returned to Dad's bedside. She looked older, defeated. Sarah and Tom huddled in the corner, finally facing the reality of their choices. A nurse approached me. Dr. Harrison, your father's labs are back. Not good. I nodded, thinking of all the times I'd saved them, supported them, protected them, and how they'd repaid that devotion with greed and manipulation. Thank you, Jenny. Please ensure he receives standard care protocols. Not your usual premium care instructions? She asked, surprised. No. They made their choice. Now they get to live with it. The next 48 hours transformed my family in ways their precious will never could. I watched from a distance as they scrambled to arrange financing for Dad's surgery. Their perfect facade cracked under pressure. Sarah had to sell her designer bags, Tom pawned his Rolex, and Mom called every relative begging for loans. Dr. Williams, the cardiac surgeon, stopped me in the hallway. Emily, your father's case. I've never known you to refuse a family referral. Things change, I replied, updating another patient's chart. He'll have to transfer to County General. The outcome statistics there for this type of surgery. He trailed off meaningfully. Sometimes people need to understand the true cost of their choices, I said quietly. Not just in money but in consequences. That evening I found Mom alone in the hospital chapel. She looked up as I entered, her makeup streaked with tears. We found a surgeon at County General, she said, her voice hollow. The success rate is lower, but it's what we can afford. I sat beside her, maintaining professional distance. You know, Mom, for 15 years I've been the family safety net. Every emergency, every crisis, every financial disaster, I fixed it. Not because you asked nicely. Not because you appreciated it. But because I believe that's what family does. Emily, we didn't know. No, you knew. You just didn't care. You saw my success as a resource to exploit, not an achievement to celebrate. When was the last time any of you asked about my day? About the lives I save? About the 70-hour weeks I work? She stayed silent. Did you know I was offered a position as head of surgery at Mayo Clinic last month? Of course not, because at the family dinner where I planned to announce it, you were too busy disinheriting me. Mom's hands trembled. We can change the will. This isn't about the will anymore. It's about respect. It's about family, meaning more than just who can provide what. It's about understanding that success comes with responsibility, not entitlement. I stood up, straightening my white coat. I've instructed Dr. Williams to take Dad's case. Pro bono. Her head snapped up. Not because of your tears. Not because of the will. But because I took an oath to save lives, and I won't let my father become a casualty of this family's greed. Thank you, Emily. She started to reach for me, but I stepped back. Don't thank me yet. There are conditions. First, Sarah and Tom get jobs, real jobs, not their usual schemes. Second, you and Dad attend family counseling. Third, you all learn to stand on your own feet. And if we don't agree? Then Dad gets transferred to County General and you all live with that choice. 20 minutes later, I watched them sign the agreement I'd had my lawyer prepare. Sarah cried as she accepted a position as an entry-level office assistant. Tom agreed to sell his car and start paying his own bills. Mom and Dad committed to weekly counseling sessions. Dad's surgery was successful. During his recovery, I visited strictly as his doctor, maintaining professional boundaries they'd never thought to respect before. 6 months later, things had changed. Sarah discovered she actually enjoyed earning her own money. Tom started a small legitimate business without asking for family handouts. Mom and Dad learned to see their children as adults, not resources or burdens. The will. They revised it to divide everything equally, but by then it didn't matter. I'd helped them understand that true family wealth isn't measured in inheritances or handouts, but in respect, independence, and mutual support. Today, my parents' house has a new family photo on the wall. In it, we're all standing together at my Mayo Clinic appointment ceremony. Sarah's wearing off-the-rack clothes but a genuine smile. Tom's tie is cheap but his pride is real. Mom and Dad look older but wiser. Me. I'm in my white coat, finally seen not just as the family ATM, but as Dr. Emily Harrison, Chief of Surgery, and a daughter whose value extends far beyond her bank account. Sometimes the hardest lessons require the strongest boundaries. And sometimes hitting rock bottom is the only way for a family to build a stronger foundation. They never tried to use me for money again. Instead, they learned something more valuable: that true family worth isn't measured in cents and dollars, but in respect, growth, and genuine love. The will sits in a drawer now, largely forgotten, because we all finally understood that the real inheritance isn't what's left behind when someone dies. It's what we build together while we're living.